my actual eyesight. Is there the high drive? Deep center. Go, go, go. We're out of here. We're out of here. Say ya, playa.
Just like they drew it up in Hollywood. Caladros, the 3-2. Swing and a miss! And the Audubon Green Wave have upset the Kingsway Dragons! And this is it for good! The Audubon Green Wave are back in the Final Four! A gold pile on their side!
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to DW Broadcasting's coverage of men's varsity.
From our entire crew, we'll see you tomorrow. Have a good one, folks.
All right, all the mics are hooked up and we are rolling. This is a special edition of the Dan Wilkins Show, and I'm not really numbering it because I don't feel like there's a need to number an episode where I am the guest. But I'm here with Ryan Seber, a senior at Gateway High School. He is interviewing me today for a special edition of the Dan Wilkins Show. Ryan, thank you for making the time. I know it's teacher convention weekend. You'd normally be in class right now.
Thank you for having me.
So this is at least filling up your afternoons a little bit, but explain a little bit about why you're interviewing me on this random Thursday.
Yeah, so Gateway offers a class where we do internships throughout the year. And a project for the class, I have to interview a person in the field that I want to get into, Dan being the person I need to interview. So there you go.
I feel like I'd be a good test subject for this. Maybe you might outperform your other students. I don't know.
This is the first, I've been told this is the first person who's ever tried to do a podcast episode for this project. So
So you're breaking barriers already.
apparently.
All right.
Yeah, all right, so I'm going to dive right in. So start from the very beginning. How did you get involved with sports broadcasting?
So when I got started with sports broadcasting, first of all, runs in the family a little bit. My dad wanted to go to college for sports communications, or to get into broadcasting. His parents didn't agree with it. He went to be a music teacher at TCNJ, with Trenton State at the time. And the thing about, how I got involved outside of him was my local Little League. If you've ever passed by Audubon Little League, it's across the street from the high school. And
Yeah,
there's this press box. There's like a little clubhouse, a press box. They have their monthly board meetings in there and everything. And I ended up, when I was like 11 years old, I want to say this was like 2016, there were a couple of buddies up there, maybe not buddies of mine, but people up there. There was like a chaperone sitting at the end of the desk, and 3 or 4 kids that were announcing their kids' names, their friends' names. And I was like, I didn't like the way that they were doing it. I thought that as the 11-year-old that I was at the time, like, I was truly being a kid and taking issue with the fact that they were being unprofessional in announcing Little League names. So that is a theme that has carried with me throughout my entire life. Is like, my mom said, a long time ago when I was like 14, 13 years old, that like you already basically act like an adult anyways. So I take a little bit of pride in that. Um, but either way, I'm looking at these 3 kids and I'm just like, I feel like I can do better than them. So I asked the chaperone, I walk up the stairs at the press box and I ask the chaperone, I say, hey, can I announce a couple names? And he's like, sure, go ahead. And I fell in love with it right away. Like, there was obviously a lot of nerves going into it because you're speaking in front of a lot of people, but honestly, looking back,
Even at that age, that's hard to do
it's
in
hard to do.
general, but especially at that age. So,
Yeah, so I'm glad that I was able to kind of break down that fear that I had, because as a broadcaster, you have to be used to speaking in front of lots of people, whether you see their faces or not. We've had several games with my company where over 200, 300 people are watching at the same time. And the worst thing you can do is visualize those 300 people with 300 faces.
yes.
You just have to look at that number and shrug and say, just take it like a normal job, and not let that affect you. But for me getting started, public address for Audubon Little League, I asked the chaperone, he's like, sure. I fell in love with it right away, and that kind of got me on the right path to where I am now.
It's awesome. So I guess from that, you should kind of grow from that kind of to what it is today.
Yeah, like I was the Little League. Yeah, I kind of actually became like the de facto PA guy for a couple of years, because I was gonna say when I was 11, that had to be, I think it was 2016. So 8 years ago at this point. And then 2018 was when the Little League was like, hey, we would really appreciate this, like if you did this for every game. You know, in Jersey, you have to be, I think it's 16 to get like an actual job. But they just said, we'll just give you free food from the snack stand. That was good enough for me. At the time, I lived less than a mile, maybe a 3/4 half mile from the field. I would just ride my bike there. It was 5:49, 5:45 every Tuesday and Thursday night, and then they would have doubleheaders on Saturday at 12 and 2. So that was like my first experience with like establishing a job schedule where like I was working with the Little League and as I aged out of it and I still was playing baseball, it didn't conflict much with my baseball schedule. So I was able to have that experience in being able to say, oh, I know on this date I have to be here, on this date I have to be here. It was just one location. It never changed. So that's where it's different from today, is where I didn't have to go different places. I didn't have a car. I was still 3, 4 years out from getting a permit. So, I rode my bike everywhere. And I was really adamant on, riding my bike a lot of places and staying active, staying in good shape. So what it ended up turning into was, they gave me like a polo T-shirt with the Little League logo on it. I took that with pride because that was like my first job in the field, even though it wasn't something that people consider like a serious thing. It was serious to me at the time because I was a little kid and I was already making progress in the field I wanted to go in.
So, I mean, honestly, that's kind of like a very early form for you for networking. Like, how important is networking to what you do?
It's very important, and I tell people that all the time. You cannot be afraid to talk to people. This is one of the few fields where you can't be afraid to speak because speaking is your job. So not only can you have the courage to speak in front of a camera, speak in front of an audience, you also have to have the courage to speak in those one-on-one private conversations and make those connections. Recently, Rowan Sports Communications, they have their Pizza with Pros. And even like prospective students that want to go to Rowan can do that. And one of the things that does for those students is it networks them with people that are actually working in the field. Now, for me, it's with high school athletic directors because, we establish a base with them through the games that we end up covering their team on the road. Like, for example, tomorrow night we're doing Cherry Hill East and Washington Township high school football.
Is that a playoff game or just
It is playoff. It is playoff. Washington Township's a 1 seed. Should be a good game. And Cherry Hill East is undefeated. But anyways, um, Washington Township, the second to last week of the regular season, we did their away game at Kingsway. So how did I get in connection with Kingsway? Well, I have a friend of mine in journalism, Brian Tortella. He's a independent journalist that does South Jersey high school sports, and he's covered Gateway a number of times. So he has this good relationship with June Chaffee, the athletic director of Kingsway. So I reach out to her, I email her, and I mention Brian. And she's like, oh yeah, I've heard of your work. You're more than welcome to come out. Now, this was back in September because we scheduled a different game with Kingsway. But the second game was a Washington Township game. And Washington Township, their athletic page saw that. They watched the stream. They sent out the link. And then last week I emailed Kevin Murphy, the athletic director of Washington Township, and I said, hey, can we live stream this Washington Township playoff game? And yeah, of course. Like, he said, we'll put you in the first level of the press box. So, that's one of those things that it's like a domino effect from the networking standpoint where, it starts off small. And I got a lot of help with that with my Audubon high school years, where the Colonial Conference teams that the baseball team would play or the soccer team would play, they would talk to their guys and say, hey, we got to get you out for a game. And it was only a couple of times that I actually posted on social media and I said, we need to have, we need to have coaches reaching out to us and send us their basketball schedules or their football schedules. Pittman was one of those schools that did that. Woodstown was one of those schools because Pittman didn't play Audubon a whole lot between the Tri-County and Colonial. But we got really lucky because with Audubon baseball being such a good team, they played a lot of out-of-conference opponents.
Yes.
And the teams that they do play are from pretty far out. Bordentown, Woodstown is one of them. They're pretty far away.
Woodstown's a sneaky team. Sorry, I should mention that. They're just like
They beat my guys twice, so I'd have to agree with you.
good.
because nobody knows who they are because they're in the middle of nowhere. But who's that one 6'5" guy that hits homers for him? Something Nor.
I know you're talking about. I can't think of his
He's got that like Jose Canseco stance from the '80s. So yeah, um, but no, I mean, I wouldn't have gone down to Woodstown and, kind of reached out in that way. It took a baseball game or two for their parents to see our work and be like, oh, wow, this is some good stuff. And then what do you know? Next year, I'm working doing a Woodstown baseball game at Woodstown, the hitter friendly field that it is. So, I kind of look at networking kind of like a domino effect, like I said, where it starts small. And like with what you're doing with Gateway, you're seeing a lot of Colonial Conference opponents. And in the WJFL, you're seeing opponents from all over. And the great thing about networking in football is the WJFL having that wide range of opponents. We've done games where Rumson Fairhaven was playing, and they're in the Shore Conference. They're way out there. Um, I think a lot of people underestimate the fact that networking isn't just sending out 50 emails at a time and hoping that 3 of them stick. Networking is starting small and then getting bigger from there and being able to expand your portfolio, being able to expand your work one contact at a time.
Yeah, I mean, I actively saw this happen on multiple occasions. I think last year it was Pittman. I forget who it was. Pittman was playing someone in basketball. It was like I think round one of playoffs, and you were just talking about people getting sponsorships, and the Harper Driving School guy just came up to you, he's like, "Hey, do you need a sponsor? Like, I'll do that. Do you need a sponsor?" And then that turned into a real sponsorship for you.
And it's a sponsorship that's still going. I mean, I remember you were working that game.
Yeah.
I completely forgot. I mean, I didn't forget about the story, but I'm surprised you brought that up. I was surprised I forgot you were working that game. Yeah, I mean, that's literally how it was. He happened to be sitting next to me, Tim Rue. He's Hudson Rue's dad. He's one of the Pittman wide receivers, and he just happened to I mentioned on my broadcasts all the time because at that time we were really looking for money for advertising, and we were running low on that. So I was like, all right, well, instead of me reaching out to them, what if they reach out to us? What if they see our product? What if they see our commercials and say, hey, this is something we want to invest in? So that's how that happened with Harper Driving School, and I'm really happy about that partnership. They are probably our most loyal sponsor, and probably the one with no offense to the other sponsors that we have, but just in the local impact, they directly affect high school students
Yes.
because they're a driving school. The freshmen are going to watch their tape from the football game and say, "Oh, I need to get my permit. And I live in Mullica Hill. I can go to Harper Driving School and get my permit and get my 6 months." So Garden State Pet Center is amazing. They have excellent organic products for pets. And I don't mean to be a shill out here, but this is my show. Um, but
Sure, you can do what you want.
yes, exactly. But all of our sponsors have an impact on our viewership in some way. Like there's professional wrestling fans out there, and we're sponsored by the Dangerous Adrenaline Wrestling Gladiators. I've been really impressed by their work in replicating and doing a great job with professional wrestling here in South Jersey and in Garden State Pet Center as well. But when you look at the sponsors that we have currently, that the high school students will be most impacted by Garden State Pet Center and the pro wrestling, that's probably more towards the parents. So it's still a great impact either way. But when you're talking about student impact, a lot of kids go back and watch our film, whether they don't have somebody to film their games. Like baseball has that problem a lot, where they don't have anybody to film the games. They might just stick a GoPro behind the plate and you miss a lot of the action because the GoPro shot, even when it's at its widest angle, you're missing third base and first base.
Catching the whole field.
You're not catching the whole field. Not only do we catch the whole field, we bring a live broadcast production to that. And the parents love that because baseball doesn't get that same love that football and basketball do
Not at all.
because it's harder to do.
Yeah, and it's just most fields are kind of literally a field out in the middle of nowhere. There's really
Temporary fences like
there's
Haddon Township and Sterling.
Gateway even has
Yeah.
temporary fence.
And we haven't done a game personally there, but we did a soccer game for Gateway last year where we were on. Where my setup was for that Gateway soccer game was on second base.
Yeah, our field's below sea level. That's what I like to
Below
tell
sea
people.
level.
It's
Is that why you're called the
not
Gators?
actually, it's not actually below sea level. I just like to say that because it's kind of a dip down in the road. I just
I
like
was
to
I
say
was
that.
I was gonna say maybe that's an idea why you're called the Gators in a landlocked city.
Yeah, I can't tell you why we're called Gators. I have
We
no
don't know
idea.
why.
Never heard the story. I'm sure there's a story behind it. I've never heard it.
Have you heard the story of why the Audubon Green Wave are called the Green Wave?
I have not. Is
So
there a story behind it?
so Tony Carbone will be able to tell you there is a plaque in the trophy case in one of the hallways. If you've ever been to Audubon for a basketball game, it's in that hallway where the gym is, and it talks about a news clipping from the Courier Post in 1930. Now, this was about, I want to say 4 years after the school opened, because Audubon High School opened in 1926. And in 1930, Courier Post, there's a columnist who writes about the high school sports, and he mentions that the Audubon football team crushed Haddon Heights with a green wave of defense.
Oh,
And the name stuck from there. I don't
wow.
think they officially adopted it until around the 40s, because a lot of high schools at the time didn't have really good team names. In fact, Audubon, when it opened, was called the Parrots, and
Okay.
their scheme was red and white, very similar to Haddon Township.
Yeah.
Um,
A lot of schools fall sort of township.
yeah, Haddon Township,
What else?
Paulsboro,
Pengrove.
Pennsgrove. Well, they're more black and red, but still, I mean, just so many schools have the red and white
Yeah.
combo. But anyways, they were called the Parrots, and in one of the offices, there still is a pennant from the school's opening year in 1926 that's in red and white. And that's why the student-led newspaper that I worked for 2 years is called the Parrot, which is interesting. But yeah, that's why they're called the Green Wave. Although, if Mike DeChico watches this episode, please email me along with your game notes. Um, let me know.
Team names are incredible.
Yeah, well, let me know why you guys are called the Gators.
Tell me too. I don't know yet.
Oh my goodness.
Yes. I mean, all right, let's jump into the question. So, like, what would you say is your least favorite aspects of the job?
Um, doesn't make a lot of money. Or I should say, at my stage of work, it doesn't make a lot of money. If you're going into this job thinking that you're going to be making like Joe Buck money or Joe Davis money,
Like Tom Brady, yes.
yeah, that's the thing. That's the thing about guys like Tom Brady. They earned their living in football, and their commentator aspect of it is more for them to make money after they retire. And I'm not saying that every color commentator or color analyst is only in it for the money. What I am saying is that there's a reason why the color commentators are some of the best players that we've ever seen. Troy Aikman, Tom Brady, Greg Olson, tight end. He was amazing.
I think for like the postseason,
Jason Kelsey, too.
I think even for the postseason for like baseball, when they had like David Ortiz and like A-Rod and
Mhm.
Derek Jeter on the panel, it's like one of the most interesting panels you ever watch because they have such a different insight on the game that
Exactly.
they can really break down different moments throughout different games.
And along with that, like David Ortiz, Alex Rodriguez, and Derek Jeter are not the best commentators, and they themselves probably will say that. But they were some of the best players of all time. There has to be a special blend of player to be a great player and a great commentator. That's where you get John Smoltz, AJ Prusinski, for the Phillies, John Kruk. He's amazing. He's why I watch every night. But there's something special about a player who can also have that charisma on air.
Yeah.
And not a lot of guys have that. David Ortiz, unfortunately, doesn't have that. Alex Rodriguez doesn't have that. I mean, Derek Jeter was a general manager before he became a broadcaster. So that's why they're in the pre and post game shows, because they have the insight on the game, but they don't have the voice to be sitting in on every pitch and talking about it. So that's where the different insights come in. And from the money standpoint, that's mostly because a lot of the games that I do, I don't charge people for high school. We do make money off of paid gigs. Occasionally we have a high school paid gig. Sometimes it's youth football. Sometimes it's youth baseball. Those travel coaches pay. Um, Collegiate teams, everything like that. I'm not saying that the sports broadcasting world is completely unprofitable, because it is. In our modern world of social media, there are many different ways to make money off of sports broadcasting, but you have to work for it, and it sometimes takes years to get into the green. We've spent about $5,000 or $6,000 on equipment from 2021 when we started this company to today. Like, I think we made a purchase a couple weeks ago for about a soundboard for like $170. So, you know, it's the philosophy economically if you have to spend money to make money. And the more impressive your setup is, and the more impressive your commentary is, the more people will want to buy into that. Because right now, I did a high school football game last night, Haddon Heights and Pittman. I didn't make any money off of that, but I did it to build a resume, and I did it to build that relationship with the Haddon Heights and Pittman fans. We've covered Haddon Heights and Pittman a whole bunch of times, not specifically together, but as two separate teams. I think I've covered Pittman 18, 19 times since the start of last year. So the way I look at it, um, if you are in sports broadcasting for an immediate money grab, you're not in the right place. You have to have passion for the game. One of the things, because you're asking about my least favorite aspects of it, um, probably up there has to be the fact that you can't satisfy everybody.
Yeah.
I have gotten some complaints sometimes about what I say on the air, and it's not that I take offense to what they say, and it's not like I wholeheartedly disagree with what they say, but unfortunately, there are some people who are very naive about objectiveness. I don't even know if that's a word, but objectivity. That's the word I'm looking for. Um, we've had some baseball games where, they're like, "Oh, you're hitting against our team too much, or you're swaying your favorability into this team." Well, in some of those cases, the game's a 12-0 game. What am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
And the way it's taught is that you should find something positive out of every moment, which is sometimes just hard to do.
Yeah.
Sometimes, I mean, it is hard to find a positive moment in some aspects, like in baseball. Right fielder, pop fly, he sees it, goes for it, drops it. Didn't time the glove right, or wasn't in the right position, wasn't paying attention. How do you make something positive out of that? It's different at the college level, where people have thicker skin in the college level, and people have, um, more openness to criticism, to constructive criticism. You'll never hear me on the broadcast saying that was a terrible catch. He sucks at his job, and he needs to be let go tomorrow. No, because this is not the professionals. These guys are high school kids, and I've seen some really bad errors. But if you watch back on the live streams, I'll say that was an unfortunate play, but this inning isn't over. They've got a chance to get it back, and hopefully they'll be able to turn it around on the offense. You have to make you have even if it's not completely positive, you have to dance around that direct point sometimes, and that's sometimes difficult because there are people that are very blunt about how they speak, and there's nothing wrong with people that will tell you like it is, but there's a difference between telling it like it is in a private conversation between a coach and a player and telling it like it is on the air publicly. Sometimes I see a bad catch and just, honestly, I'll go to break at the end of the inning and I'll say, "Man, that was a bad catch." But I would never say that publicly because that's out of the integrity and the professionalism of the game. Because you don't know that right fielder's grandparents from Idaho could be watching. We had, just to go on a little tangent, we did Salem Community College softball this past spring, and the starting catcher in game one of the doubleheader was, her name was Yannick Buchman. She's from Johannesburg, South Africa, and she was recruited internationally by Salem to play softball. So I get an email, not that I said anything bad, but I get an email a couple days after the games from like at 3 in the morning. I'm thinking, who's emailing me at 3 in the morning besides Jimmy John's? Because they're the only people that email me at 3 in the morning. Jimmy John's and the New York Times morning newsletter. That's it. New York Times cooking comes in at around 11. But I get this email, and she was basically saying, "You did an excellent job." Um, and because I mentioned on the air that I said, "I'll be blunt, folks. I don't know anything about baseball and softball in South Africa. I know that Major League Baseball has produced a couple of South African players like Gift and Gope of the Pirates, um, and I think there's another one, Taylor Scott, and he's white. But uh, the way I see it, I didn't know anything, and I didn't want to make any assumptions.
Yeah.
So she emails me and she talks about how fast the game of softball, especially softball, is actually outpacing baseball in South Africa, and giving me all these compliments about the game. And I appreciated it because it was a positive email from somebody who was watching from so far away. And obviously, I think at some point we'll talk about the greatest aspects of broadcasting, but that's one of them is people watching from so far out. and being able to enjoy that experience, especially from other countries. I mean, are you kidding me? Like we had one time a baseball team was playing. I want to say it was either Shalleck or Woodstown. One of the players' older sisters was studying abroad in Italy and was able to watch the game. It was a 4 o'clock game. She watched it as she was getting ready to go to bed. So it's a nice feeling, but there are sometimes downsides to those emails. In the description of our YouTube video, I give people a contact line, which is my email and the social medias, and sometimes I do get criticism from that. Sometimes is it just and right criticism? Yes, it is. Sometimes I mess up. We all are human. And that's one of the worst parts as well, is that, I wouldn't say acknowledging your mistakes is one of the worst parts, because that makes it sound like I'm immune to making a mistake.
Yeah.
But what it is that, when you make a mistake, everybody hears it, and sometimes people take objection to it, especially in the realm of biases, where you try to be as objective as possible. Even when I was with Audubon, I tried to be as objective as possible. So that was something where, I struggled with it to start, but I got better. And by the time I was a senior, you would be hard pressed, if you didn't know who I was, to realize that I was an Audubon broadcasting guy. That's the thing. So yeah, to answer your question, probably worst aspects is probably finances. But again, I'm not really in it for the money right now. I'm in college. After college, hopefully I get a nice job and I'll work in the field and I'll make my money that way. And then along with that, sometimes you receive criticism from people that may just be looking for trouble. And and even if you do receive criticism that is fair and is of an aspect where you were the one that made the mistake and you were the one that needs to own up to that, then that's a situation where it makes you feel bad, or it makes me feel bad. So I wouldn't say I have the thickest skin in the world. So I definitely do sometimes get hurt by that a little bit. um, but yeah, that will probably be, if I had to guess, probably the worst aspects of it, even though there's not a whole lot of them.
Yeah. Well, now that we talked about the worst, what is kind of like the better aspects, your favorite aspects of it?
Well, I mentioned the positive emails we get sometimes from folks who are from a long way out, and are able to watch the games from far, far away. I get messages sometimes from like grandparents and stuff like that, that are living 2, 3,000 miles away on the other side of the country. It's an amazing feeling to get those comments, to get those emails, because that kind of validates my work and my services as like, okay, I'm doing this for a good reason. I'm not doing this just for my own gain. It's helping everybody else out as well. And that's something that in my eyes, I think makes the job worth it, is getting people happy to watch their kids play baseball on a random Tuesday at 7 o'clock at night. Um, it's a wonderful thing. Even in the youth baseball world, we get people who have us stream these travel baseball tournaments, and then their parents send it to their families, and they watch it, and it's just amazing that people appreciate our work this much. And that's not something that we get every time, because sometimes there's just local people watching. But expanding our reach that far out, even if it's not on a business level, just on a personal level, somebody whose grandparents are in Colorado can say that they were watching New Jersey baseball. It was on my live stream and they enjoyed it. That's what I find great pride in. I also take, I also love the fact that I travel a lot. I would hate it if I was stuck in an office 9 to 5 every day,
Absolutely.
same same suit and tie.
I would lose my mind if I had
Oh
to.
yeah, like I'm the kind of person that I want to do something different every time. That's why I'm a Grateful Dead and Dave Matthews fan. They haven't played the same set in 30 years. I kind of tie that into my normal life as well. Like tomorrow I'm going to Delran for soccer, and I'm going to Washington Township for football. Well, what do I have the week after that? I've got Pittman football, and I've got soccer, and I think I don't even know where I'm going, but like that's the point, is you are somewhere different every single time. And that is something that I really love, is that exploring these different high schools and different areas, seeing what's good to eat in Delran, seeing the wonderful Burlington County landscapes, these upscale homes in Morristown, and then we go down to 295, we go to Pennsville and Pennsgrove. You get to try different things down there. Go to the Italian kitchen and get yourself a $12 Thanksgiving pie. Like I really enjoy the aspect of traveling. Sometimes we even go to different states, like Maryland and Delaware for college softball. Sometimes Pennsylvania. I really enjoy the fact that I'm never in the same place 2 days in a row. Um, and that's something that I think broadcasters that are in the professional field take a lot of pride in. Excuse me, is that when they are on the road for a professional organization, they travel everywhere. Tom McCarthy and John Kruk, they see all 30 major league stadiums. Well, not all 30, but 20, 25 of the major league stadiums every year.
I'm almost certain they travel with the team too.
They do.
Like they get like an insider access to the clubhouse. Like that's what I want.
Yeah.
That's what I would.
Yeah, like you build that relationship with the team, and that's what I really enjoyed at Audubon was I was able to build a relationship with the team.
Yeah.
Obviously I didn't travel with them. I'm not going on that darn school bus. No, I don't need my nose to fall off my
I
face.
don't even like going on the bus for my own games. So.
Yeah, no, especially after they lose. Like, no,
It's a terrible. That's a terrible bus ride.
especially for somebody like me. I'm invested in the team, but I talk too much to stay quiet after a loss, especially if you're far out. Just put in headphones and go. But anyways, I did Audubon baseball for 3 full seasons in 22, 23, and 24. And through that time, I got to see these little scrawny freshmen grow into big kids. And I really enjoyed that because they kind of grew up alongside me. And I ended up being in a situation where, when I graduated this June, I realized not only is that the end of me attending Audubon High School, that's the end of me doing full-time Audubon sports. And I realized I did one soccer game this year for them, and I'm probably going to do 2 or 3 basketball games, a wrestling match, and 3 or 4 baseball games. That's not the same bond. We see Woodstown 2 or 3 times a year in baseball. It's in our travels. Those players know me, but I don't really know them that well. There are more people that know me than people that I know.
Does that ever get awkward where you just someone comes to you, hey, how's it going? You're like, hey.
It very much does. It happens a lot. Now, it doesn't help that I have magnets on the side of my car that tell people who I am.
It's true.
And I do take those off occasionally if I'm going to Philly for work or something like that, or if I'm going places far away that are not related for work. I'm gonna take them off. I went to Baltimore for an Orioles game a couple months ago. Took off the magnets because I don't need them. People in Baltimore don't know who I am. Not yet, at least. Maybe if I get hired by the Orioles, I don't know. But it does get awkward. But I kind of take it in stride, and then I get back in my car and I realize that's somebody who knows me, but I don't know them. That's a weird feeling because it kind of makes you put into perspective your impact on the local communities. I'm sometimes I was in Pennsville, or I was in Pennsgrove the other day for football. This was actually 2 weeks ago at this point, and I'm in the Italian kitchen getting my Thanksgiving apple pie, and a couple of other things, and somebody walks in with no distinctive high school apparel, and they recognize me, and they're like, and I wasn't wearing a DWB hat either. I was wearing very similar basketball shorts, t-shirt, and a non-sports related hat. And they're like, "Oh, you're Dan Wilkins," and I'm like, "Yeah, I am." How do I know you? And they're like, "Oh, you did the Pennsville game last year," and I'm like, "Oh, okay, that's a long time ago,
It's yeah, I've also done 100 broadcasts since then.
Yeah, last night was broadcast number 416. I've been to so many different places where it's hard to remember. And not only that, but those are the fans. And those fans might have not even been in attendance when I was there. They might have just been watching online, and at the halftime break they see my face when I'm yapping about for 5 minutes. So it's really kind of a surreal feeling that it sometimes makes you question, or it sometimes makes you appreciate the impact that you have, but it also makes me a little bit upset sometimes that I can't grow that personal connection with this many people. Like we have nearly 2,500 subscribers on YouTube. I can't know 25 people. That's 2,500 people.
25.
Yeah, that's a low bar, but no, I can't know 2,500 people, so that makes the situation a little bit complicated for me, and it just kind of makes me realize, that wow, my impact really is profound in these local areas.
All right, so what do you think are some terms you try to like typically avoid while on broadcasting outside of like the obvious ones that you're definitely not allowed to say?
Yeah, if you ever seen George Carlin, he talked about the 7 words you can never say on television. Those are your first 7. Um, no, but some terms that I try to avoid. Honestly, there's not a lot of terms I try to avoid because you want to expand your vernacular instead of limiting it,
Yes.
and you want to expand the word bank that you speak with instead of keeping it archaic and simple. Now, when I talk about vernaculars and word banks and stuff like that, you know, I think that some people that are trying to be a little too fancy kind of lose their viewers because their viewers don't understand the words that they're saying. Um, and you have to find perfect balance between not talking like an idiot and not talking like a Harvard professor. Because if you end up speaking with this posh, quaint tone, that comes off as condescending because you're saying words that the average American and the average viewer doesn't know.
I feel like a lot about broadcasting and kind of like talking to the general public is the ability to have the general public know what you are saying.
Well, you said it right there.
Yeah.
General public,
Yeah.
not a specific group of aristocrats and Ivy League graduates. And you're not talking to idiots either. These people, first of all, if you dumb down the knowledge too much, it comes off as condescending, and
Okay.
it sounds like you're
You're
talking to
almost
them like an idiot.
it's almost offensive at that
Yeah,
point.
it's almost offensive. Like, wow, that was a good play. He made a great throw. That comes off as condescending. So the way that I look at it is, when you're talking about a play that's happening, you want to describe it like it is, and you want to describe it with the words that you know. The problem that I had when I was getting started was that I was trying to shove in words that sounded smart, but you don't have to. You just have to talk like a human being because that's the point of communication. Communication. That's the point. You are communicating. So when I look at broadcasters who sometimes just have a little bit too wide of a vocabulary, you kind of lose the point. Think about like in an English class when you're like trying to think of the same synonym for like the same 5 words, and you end up losing your reader, you end up losing your listener because your point is diluted in these words that nobody can understand. You're trying to sound fancy, but you end up just sounding condescending and too posh or aristocratic for these people that are normal people to understand.
So you've obviously done a lot of different sports. What in your opinion are like your better sports to cover?
In terms of how I broadcast them, or in
Like
terms of like viewership.
both.
Okay. My favorite sport to cover all time, baseball, 100%. I've probably told every person that I've ever met that is my favorite sport to cover, just because it was the first sport that I was heavily invested in. My buddy Hunter, who turned 19 a few weeks ago, he's a couple weeks older than me. We've been great friends since we were in like third or fourth grade. And I remember one specific day, I think it was 2015, he brought over to my apartment at the time his Michael Jordan lunchbox that had baseball cards in it. And I fell in love with it from there, and that's how I got started with baseball. I enjoyed the Phillies. I've been to Phillies games, but I didn't understand the game that well. I didn't really love the game that well. I was more into auto racing. I was a NASCAR guy. You can probably have Billy McCauley as a guest, and we could talk about NASCAR for 3 hours. But
That kid loves NASCAR.
yeah, but But either way, like that was what I loved when I was a kid, and Monster Jam too. The big monster trucks.
I like Monster Jam too.
They're
Monster
great.
Jam's awesome.
I was a adamant Avenger fan when I was a kid, and I also appreciated War Wizard and Captain's Curse too. There was some good stuff in there, but that's a topic for another episode. Um, but either way, you know, um, baseball has always been my best at, and sometimes I look at these games that I cover that are like middle of the road, like, two decent teams. Neither of them are really going to win a state championship, and the game gets like 150, 200 views. I don't really shrug that off that much because I still enjoyed watching the game. I score all of my games with a scorebook. I don't really keep live stats for football. So baseball is one of those sports that not only does it work well for the viewership aspect of it because people watch a lot of baseball, but it also works in the passion aspect of it. Sometimes I cover a game that just doesn't do that well. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. But when I have a game for basketball that doesn't do that well, I'm like, okay, I should reconsider this a little bit more. So baseball, it holds a lot more weight in terms of what I enjoy. Now, the best sport for viewership has been football. This is our second season covering football, and even though it's probably second or third in terms of sports that I enjoy covering. I would say second, actually. I would say second in terms of sports that I enjoy covering, behind baseball. But it's best for viewership because more people watch football games, especially this Washington Township game that's coming up tomorrow night. It's going to be pretty crazy. But funny enough, the most viewed broadcast that we have, the top two are both baseball games, and the most concurrent, which was 385, was Rancocas and Gloucester Catholic baseball from May. So, um, when I look at it, I look at it in two ways. One is the viewership and business side of it. One is the passion side. When it comes to passion, it's baseball. When it comes to viewership, I would say it's football. But baseball's not far behind. We have some really well performing baseball games, like the South Jersey Group One final from last year, Woodstown and Gloucester. That was one of the greatest games I've ever covered in my whole life.
Gloucester ended up winning that one, right?
Gloucester won in a walk-off sacrifice fly.
Oh, nice.
It was amazing. And that place hadn't won a sectional title in 50 years.
Yeah.
I think it was 50 years to the day that they actually won
Oh, wow.
the sectional championship from 1974 to 2024. It was one of the greatest storylines I had ever seen. But yeah, that would be my favorite to cover.
So, I mean, just moving right along. What are like your least favorite sports?
I saw the restraint. Least favorite. Well, there are a handful of sports that I've covered only once or twice, like field hockey. Um, I'd probably say field hockey, but not as a slight or as a jab against field hockey.
Yeah.
It's just that I haven't covered it enough to understand it. There's a lot of whistles. There's a lot of time that I don't. There's a lot of penalties that I don't really understand yet.
I think I've watched two field hockey games, and both times the whistle would just blow, and I'm like, "Why the whistle blow?" And they're like, "Oh, someone hit the ball wrong." And I was like, "You hit the ball wrong?" I was like,
And you can hit the ball wrong, and we're still playing.
"Yeah." I'm like, "I don't know what's happening anymore." Like, I just get so confused when I'm watching.
Yeah, so I would probably say field hockey, but not as like, field hockey's a bad sport.
Just I don't understand. I'm with them. Like,
Yeah, if I watched a full season of field hockey, I could probably understand it. Um, I've actually, if you interviewed me 3 weeks ago, I probably would have said volleyball because of my limited experience there with RCSJ. But I've enjoyed it now. Um, I've learned to commentate it a little bit with the strikes and the play kills and stuff like that. Um, does Gateway have volleyball?
No.
Okay, not a lot of Group 1 or Group 2 schools do.
I don't think there's anyone in the conference.
In the Colonial,
Yeah,
no. I think the only one that does, I actually think Haddon Township has girls volleyball. I think. But it's kind of like ice hockey where they play in a different conference. They don't play in the Colonial. Or not even the ice hockey, like swimming.
Yeah,
Not every school has a swimming team.
actually.
Gateway Swimming and Audubon and Collingswood have a joint swimming team called the Wanthers. They call them the Wanthers because it's Audubon and Collingswood. It's a joint team.
The only school I can think of that has a volleyball team is Clearview.
Yeah, Clearview, Eastern, Cherokee, the big schools.
Big schools, yeah.
But I covered college volleyball, which is the high school volleyball is best of 3 sets. This is best of 5. But Yeah, best of 5. So it wasn't that fun to cover to start, mostly because the programs that we saw were mostly rebuilding schools, but it it got fun with the atmosphere. You have to have good atmosphere for that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And when I covered field hockey, I didn't feel like the atmosphere was the same. Um, and again, that's not a slight against field hockey. It's like I said, I've covered 2 games, I think, and both of them were like 8-0, 9-0 blowouts. So maybe if I see a competitive field hockey game, maybe if I do it again down the road, I could definitely dip my toes back in it and try it again. But that would probably be my kind of run around the answer there.
Yeah, right. And as you and I both know, covering kind of our own games, we know that not everything goes perfectly. As I mean, even with my pregame show for Gateway Pittman 2 weeks ago, no, like almost everything that could have went wrong went wrong. So, like, kind of how important is it just to roll with the punches and make your mistakes look like it was meant to be?
It's something that takes a lot of skill to roll with the punches because that was something I struggled with when I was getting started. Um, I would stumble over my words and I would say, "Oh, sorry, folks." But no, like everybody stumbles over their words. The best of the best stumble over their words. Now, the best of the best stumble over their words less than others. But you notice how I'm like kind of talking in this like blocky format where I'm like saying a couple words at a time. I'm in this long run and then I stop, I start, I start, and I stop. So the way it works for me is that when I make a mistake, if it's just a verbal mistake of I said the wrong word or I messed up, or just said the wrong thing, you correct it and you move on. You just have to have a short memory. That's all it is.
Yeah,
You have to realize that like sometimes I look back at a broadcast like I can barely watch my old broadcasts from like 2021, 2022 because I don't like them. It's just like how a band doesn't like their old music. It's you like the newer stuff better because you think you are better now than you were then. Everybody wants to think that they were better now than they were then.
yeah,
They want to believe in improvement. So the way I see it is if you're commentating and you mess up, you just got to have a short memory, rip off the band-aid and move on.
yeah. I remember a couple weeks ago I was covering Mastery Gateway,
Hmm.
and Mastery's roster wasn't like completed. Like there was just
Uh,
players that like they would
can't.
number 18. I still don't know his name, but he got the ball. I think 70% of the game. Like the ball was going to him,
Yeah, but that's not
and
your fault.
yeah. But every time I should be like, so number 18 on play. It was just kind of there's just ways to work around it.
Yeah, and honestly, I mean, that's one of the biggest pet peeves is like, just when rosters aren't completed, whether it's for baseball or especially for football. And what we did, so we had a game between Camden Eastside and Pennsauken this year, where Camden Eastside's roster was not full. However, they specifically gave us the impact players. So we only had 1 or 2 plays where it ended up actually being an issue because what do you know? If they gave us 13, I want to say 14 players, and the only time that it came into play was that when like a second string safety made an interception. That was about it because he wasn't on the impact players list. But the quarterback, running back, maybe 2 or 3 wide receivers, a tight end, and a couple of defensive linemen that are going to make the sacks. That was the good stuff. They got it right, even though they didn't have the full roster. Now, I've been pretty adamant about this for a little while. NJ.com, or at least the state, should mandate that all rosters are updated, that you put in stats for the teams because it's a disservice to the kids who play football to be on a team where their stats are not publicly counted so that the coaches can't recruit them. Um, but that's how I see it. Is there's some teams that are actively not putting stats in or putting in accurate stats for their teams, and I'm just like, you're doing a direct disservice to your program. And Camden Eastside at least did the right thing and gave us the impact players, and we got it 95% right. But yeah, you were talking about that with number 18 on Mastery Camden. He's the mystery man. Nobody knows who he is. And that's what I'm talking about, is that's a direct disservice to the players where number 18, would you say he did a good job?
He did a great job.
Yeah, exactly. So
For what it was, he did great.
for what it was, Mastery got shut out in that game, but guess what? He did a great job. What if a college coach wants to recruit him? He's looking at your video and he's like, "Wow, I would love to know who number 18 is,
Same.
but nobody knows who he is. There's no roster online. There's nothing." So Um, these coaches, they do a great job. They have a lot on their plate already, but I think it would be very helpful for these kids to be able to receive that help and just being noticed and being recognized.
Yeah. So like, besides Audubon, because bias. Like, what's like your favorite place to go to, like, to cover games?
It depends on the sport. I have a little spreadsheet, funny enough, that I bring up, which actually tells me how many times I've covered a game for a specific team. Like for Audubon, I've covered 139 Audubon games. By the way, they are 90, 49, and 4 in those games, which is really good.
Yeah, it's a really good record.
And like 64%, like that's really good.
Yeah.
But like Gloucester, Pittman, Paulsboro are up there. I think each complex has its own charm to it. Like obviously, I would say Gateway's up there. Because well, first of all, Ethernet. I mean, that's
Oh
great.
God, it's amazing.
But here's the thing. How I see a complex is different from how a fan would see a complex. Because they're looking at it for, well, just can I get a good seat and how's the parking and how's the atmosphere? All I think about it is how big is the press box? How do the windows open? Is it cold? Is it too hot? Is it small? Are there separate rooms that separate us from the public address people? And along with that, there are aspects of the fan atmosphere that I take into it as well. How good is the parking? What is there around the stadium that's good? What's the town atmosphere like? Um, what is the cleanliness of the stadium? Because remember, we're one of the first people that's at the stadium an hour and a half before the game, and then we are some of the last people there. Besides the maintenance crew and the people that have to turn off the lights, we're some of the last people there. In fact, we did a Gateway game a couple weeks ago where we were so late, as in we were one of the last people there, that the maintenance crew shut out the lights on us.
Yep. I still had stuff on the field. I had to take inside, and the lights were off. I was like, I don't know where anything is now.
But yeah, like look, I sometimes walk down the stairs and I see there's a lot of trash. And I look at Gateway, there's not a lot there.
Yeah, they do a good job.
They
Feel clean.
yeah, and well that's also partially on the fans' responsibility is leave it how you found it. Not every school has that same culture. So if I look at the spreadsheet and if I look at the schools that I've covered the most, I'll just do a quick rundown of a couple here. Gloucester is really good for almost all sports. Have you been to Gloucester's gym for basketball?
I've not.
Okay, so they have a little press area at the top row, which has desks and power and some ledges and stuff like that. Really good stuff. Baseball is amazing there. A really nice little complex there. A lot of open space, a lot of trees. Obviously, Gloucester High School next to Route 130, busy highway. You don't hear a lot of it because it's
Like
separated.
silent. It's weird.
Yeah,
It's right there. But
it's
silent.
weirdly quiet. And then for football, they have an amazing complex as well. One of 3 stadiums I've been to serve Chick-fil-A sandwiches.
Nice.
Gloucester, Kingsway, and I'm trying to think of the other one. Gateway doesn't serve Chick-fil-A, right?
No, I
Okay.
wish we did.
Yeah, because they're like $7. I'm trying to think of who. Oh, Cinnaminson.
Yeah.
No. Deptford. I'm sorry. Deptford has Chick-fil-A sandwiches. So, yeah, Deptford, Kingsway, and Gloucester all get bonus points for Chick-fil-A sandwiches.
Yeah, I think Middletown also has Chick-fil-A sandwiches.
I've never been to Middletown Township, so
A really nice viewing complex, I will say.
all of Cape May County is really nice. Lower Cape May is really good. If you want to go a little bit further up, if you're talking about, or a little bit further down, like Wildwood, they have some good stuff.
I will say one of my favorite fields I've ever played on is Bunis Field. Really nice. But actually, my favorite field I've ever played on was Alcyon. Alcyon Park is the nicest field.
See, that's where I get tripped up a little bit. It's because with Pittman, their basketball gym is really nice. You've been there. Their football field is decent, but it's old. They play at the middle school. They don't have a lot of room. But then you have but
It's a field.
it's a field, but it's old. It's got this like timeless quality to it. And then they play baseball at Alcyon Park a mile down the road. So,
Which like I said, I would argue is probably the nicest field.
basketball is the only sport that they play that's on school property. Base baseball's not on school property. Soccer is played on that adjacent soccer field at Alcyon. Um, and I don't know where they do track and field because there's no track at the football field. So either way, though, you know, uh, um, Gloucester's up there. Pittman really nice with Alcyon Park. If I'm talking all around great complexes, one that doesn't get enough love, I think, is Clearview. They have really good stuff. I love their baseball field. It's called the Bog because of how low it is. And if you ever watched one of my Clearview broadcasts for
I
baseball,
played a Clearview last year. I kind of had an idea what to. The backstop is huge at Clearview.
yeah, but you know that outfield wall that has all the bricks on it and
Yeah,
stuff like
it's
that.
really nice.
It's really nice, and it's great for us as broadcasters because we can just pull right up to it, and we have an amazing vantage point. We have that overhead view that you get professionally, and we get that in the baseball aspect. So, Cinnaminson has some good complexes as well, a lot of parking there. Um, Same thing with, let's see here, I'm just looking down the list again. Pennsville. I love their stuff as well. Um, yeah, just because it's in its own little weird corner of South Jersey.
That's true.
Like
It's like
it's a straight shot.
there's like nothing. It's just trees, and then all of a sudden it's a school and like big complex.
You got Salem, Pennsgrove, and Pennsville. They're in their own little world down there.
The football field has really cool lights.
Oh yeah, the pyrotechnics that they
Yeah.
do. Yeah, like the flashing lights.
Yeah.
That's really cool stuff. Did Gateway play Pennsville?
Yes.
Okay, I didn't.
Not this year, last year.
Last year, did they play at Pennsville?
Yes.
Oh, okay. That's why I was like, how do you know about the lights?
Yeah.
That's really interesting. But yeah,
We played them in the first round of playoffs for baseball. That was,
that was a different story.
as interesting as well.
Yeah, so I would say overall, my number one favorite for all sports would probably be Gloucester, which is why we go back so much. There are some places that are really nice for baseball, and then their football and basketball schedule setups are and you can mix and match that with any sport that you want. But if we're talking about any sport that we want to cover, the easiest place to get to, I if I left this house right now where I live in Audubon, it would take me less than 10 minutes to get there. I wouldn't have to go on any highways. It's perfect. It's right down the road. And I would say Gloucester is probably the best for all around athletics.
All right. So like, how does social media play into like what you do, like promoting, yeah, specifically?
It it helps, and it helps more than it ever has, really. There's a lot of people who think that you need to have this um, kind of almost like provocative message of like, almost like clickbait for YouTube videos. And you don't need that. But what you do need is a sense of structure. You know, we do our game day posts. It's the same format almost every time. Um, we do our final scores. I only changed that format in October for that. It was the same graphic every time. So people like when things are the same on social media because they know what to look for. It's the same format. It's reliable. It's consistent. People lock in on that. And for YouTube, like you've seen the thumbnails that we put up, it's simple. DWB logo in the top left. You have the sport name. You have a road logo and a home logo. And then you have the team names, the school names at the bottom. So um, on YouTube, like that's just easier to understand because you see like a shot of the basketball court and you're like, who's this playing? And you have to read the title. Well, nobody wants to read. They see the Collingswood logo and they see the Cumberland logo and they're like, oh, this is Collingswood Cumberland soccer. It's easy to understand. So when I'm looking at like Twitter or Instagram, that is a little bit different. And what I will say, I mentioned this to somebody a couple weeks ago, is that likes are not equal on all platforms. Instagram, I'll get about 20 to 80 likes on a normal post. And on Twitter, I rarely get more than 10. Now, we have similar followings. I have about 2,000, maybe 2,200 followers on Instagram and Twitter each. And some of them are the same people that follow me on both platforms. So on Instagram, people just scroll away, scroll, like, scroll, like. Twitter's different, or X, I should say. They are,
Nope. Twitter.
yeah, no, you're right. Twitter's a little bit different because people scroll and they'll acknowledge a post. They'll look at it, which is why they have that view counter now that shows you how many people viewed the post. Um, but they don't usually like it. And I think the stigma from that is that Twitter's likes used to be public. So people used to be able to see what you liked. So people commented on a lot of posts, retweeted a lot of posts, but for whatever reason, they just didn't really like it. And Facebook is kind of the same way. We're not as active on Facebook, um, but there's not people will like a post about half as much as they do on Instagram, but more on Twitter. But I'm sorry, then more than on Twitter. So like people value the like button differently on a mobile app like Instagram versus Twitter, which is primarily a desktop app that you would use on a computer or laptop, as opposed to being on your phone. So with social media being so important nowadays, it's important to stay in loop with what's going on. It's important to be informed on the events going on in the world. It's important as well, and you've probably seen this in a couple of my posts, is to stay up to date on memes.
Yes.
I posted something a couple weeks ago. I tried to say that with a straight face. I posted something a couple weeks ago about DWB hoodies going up for sale, and it's that one guy in the corner of a party. I don't know if you saw that.
I did see.
And I was just like, I'm a 19-year-old kid, but I've got an old soul. People call me old all the time because I act that way. And I don't understand half of it. I'm not going to go on the broadcast and although one time I did say they bring the boom. Although the full interpretive dance was not included in that.
Doing that thing. It's my favorite thing.
That's something you would do.
I do that dance so much.
But I just you have to be like you have to be keeping up with like these social media trends because people love the trends. If I post a meme about, you know, uh a DWB hoodie being worn by the Rizzler next year, it's not going to hold the same weight.
No, not at all.
Like because people are like, "Well, who's this kid?" And who's Baby Gronk? By the way, a side note, I know you probably have some more questions left. Is that Rob Gronkowski's real son?
No,
It's not.
not at all. Like, not even related to the family. It's like he's just like a dominant, like 7-year-old football player. So people are like, oh, it's Baby Gronk. Because like he just runs through kids. It's insane to watch.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's I honestly I thought he was just Baby Gronk because he like, you got Baby LeBron, Bronny James, and then you got um Baby Gronk. I don't
Zero relation to the
Oh my
family.
gosh, that's
At all.
crazy. But yeah, what I'm saying is like that meme probably won't hold up in a year or two, let alone a month or two, because meme culture shifts like every month, if even that. Um, like by the time I got on the feed about Moo Dang, that hippo, the hippo, like it was too late. I could make a post about it. The good thing about like what I posted about that guy in the corner, that's a timeless one. There are very few memes that are timeless, and it ends up creating this shift where like people of different ages and different generations can like the post because it's popularized enough to where everybody understands what it is. If I, post a troll face or something like that, everybody's going to know what that is. It's a little bit outdated, don't get me wrong, but people are going to know what that is. But if I post a meme about that kid on the beach who's got his fist in the air from like 2010, or if I post Ermiger or DWB hoodies are on sale for $25 until January 1st, like that, nobody's going to get that because it's outdated. You have to stay in the loop on social media culture, and that's always something that I have found to be a fun part of my job is like just being able to. I mean, because being on the internet, it's part of your job, and you have to keep an eye on what's popular.
Yeah, I will say it's probably one thing that I have struggled with so far is like promoting myself on the internet and like being up to date, being in the loop. Because like my first broadcast I did, I think we had at most 20 viewers at one time, like when it was live.
Well, Mike sent out the clip, sent out the Twitter link, Instagram, YouTube link.
Yeah, but like then after once more people found out, it has like I think close to 300 views now.
Mhm.
So I think that's probably one thing I should work on is being in the loop, and because people live on social media, that's just how it is, how it'll always be. That's where everyone gets all their information is through their phones, through the news. So I feel it's important to get out there and gain popularity that way.
It's important to to stay in the loop on what's going on, and it's important to promote yourself but not be cocky. Like I created the company in October of 2021, and I did not have any Twitter page until October of 2022. And with that, very rarely was it used to promote um my actual work. Only in the past year did I really use it to get involved with my actual broadcasting work. Now, what I will say is that my Instagram page that I have, DW Broadcasting, that was my personal page for a while, from 2016 up until 2022, and then I wiped everything off the page. I archived everything. I didn't delete it because I still sometimes look at those old posts and I cringe. But I look at those posts sometimes. I had over 1,600 Instagram posts that I had to one by one manually archive.
Ouch.
So I was seeing a lot of 2016 memes from somebody who was a 12-year-old who did not understand what being a 12-year-old was like. Like, if you thought I talked in an older fashion now, I did even more so back then. Like, I really should have been like I was the nerd of the class.
Were you like that one like Jaden Smith thing where he's like kids were in class being like crazy, and then he was like, "Can we just talk about the economical and political state of the world right now?" Were you like, was that like, were you like that?
Honestly, I don't even know if I was like that, but I was like the goody two shoes. I never got in any trouble. I had detention once in fourth grade, for forging my mom's signature on a homework assignment. Um, and if you've ever seen me handwrite,
I do that all the time.
it was awful. And what's even worse is that I thought I could get away with it, because I was just like I was awful at getting like I literally my mom said one time, if the viewers at home have ever heard of the joke about doctors having terrible handwriting. My mom said, "Well, at least if you don't make it in sports broadcasting, you can be a doctor." Like, that's how bad my handwriting has always been, and I always take notes on the laptop because I don't, a pen and paper is nice. I can sign my name and whatever, but, um, like if I'm writing for like 20 minutes, my hand cramps up and my sevens turn into Z's and my L's turn into I's, and it's bad. But, um, yeah, so we were talking about, what were we talking about?
Social media.
Yeah, social media. Yes, yes, important things. Um, but yeah, circling back to the main point, social media is more important than it ever has been, and it will continue to become more important in our day-to-day lives, more than it already is. Because we follow our teams on social media and we get live score updates from them. We follow politicians on social media. We follow, news organizations, activist groups, food companies. I think for about 30 seconds back in 2019, I was accidentally followed by Baskin Robbins on Instagram. They hit a wrong button or something because I tagged them in a post and they followed me for about 30 seconds.
Nice.
So that was the peak of my life. This interview is talking about when I got followed by Baskin Robbins.
That's all we're doing.
Yeah, because I was a celebrity for 30 seconds. I was one of over 4,000 people that they followed on Instagram. It's not even an exclusive club, but yeah, but that Instagram page was my personal page for a while. So I had to wipe everything and then change the bio, change the username, change the password because I have social media interns that run some of the stuff on there. Um, and then I kind of had to share the wealth a little bit there. So I'm not in like a paying program on Instagram or anything, but just making those posts, sending it out, it's important. And you have to stay in the loop not only with current internet culture, but also with, what your followers are doing and where they are. Like, I have a lot of Audubon followers because I'm from Audubon. I went to Audubon High School. So I post a decent amount of Audubon content or Pittman content or like Gloucester and Gloucester Catholic content, because we know that they'll post it on their Instagram stories. Their friends will see it. They will post it to their stories, and boom, it's a domino effect, and you get 500 likes on a post. That's how it happens.
I guess kind of my last question here. What's not necessarily the end goal, but like where do you hope to grow like 10, 20 years from now?
Oof, I don't even know what I'm having for dinner tonight. Um, no, but I've always said the end goal has been a job in Major League Baseball. Um, and that's a very exclusive club to get in because it's 30 teams. Now, there are hundreds of jobs within those teams, but the end goal is play by play broadcasting in Major League Baseball. Now, what I tell people all the time is you can shoot for the stars, but you have to find somewhere to land. And that's an important piece of what sports broadcasting is that you can be ambitious. You can make those preposterous goals, but you have to be able to be humble enough to realize that if this doesn't work out, you have to have a backup plan. Broadcasting is one of those industries where you have to have that. And sports media has grown into such wide field that you can become a sports media worker without being on the air right away. You could be working in social media. You could be working in game day promotions. You could be working in, um, like production, editing, graphics. So many jobs in modern sports media. There are so many jobs and so many leagues. There's ESPN Plus that does college stuff. There's the high school networks around here. There is the minor league baseball stuff, the AHL for hockey, the G League for basketball. The NFL doesn't really have anything. I've said before that the USFL and XFL, they should become NFL minor leagues.
Oh, absolutely. I agree with that.
Because imagine if a Philadelphia team, like just like how it is in Major League Baseball, the Phillies have a AAA team in Lehigh Valley. That's not far. The Eagles could have their practice squad and more on a team in Harrisburg or in Reading or even in like Allentown, or put it in Delaware in Wilmington. They'll have teams there. But either way, um, there's a lot to be said about what people want with their careers. I'm one of those people that I feel like I have a pretty straightforward end goal, but I have to work for it. I have to put in that time, I have to put in that dedication, and it's not going to be easy. I know it. I'm not going to grab my college degree in 2028
And
and
then
be hired
immediately,
into a
yeah.
job. I doubt that's going to happen. Um, I mean, there are people who obviously achieve success quicker than others, but you cannot compare the speed of your development to others. You can't look at the guy who got an internship in college and got the job by the time he graduated. You can't look at him and say, "Man, he got that job really fast. I'm disappointed in myself that I couldn't do that." Because it's like comparing oranges to apples. You don't know what he did to get there. You don't know maybe who he knows or how he did it. Um, and you can't stay fixated on that. You kind of have to develop your own psyche and your own path to getting to that position. So if your end goal is to be like a camera operator in the NFL, well, NFL Films is in Mount Laurel, and there's been
Yep.
several people from Rowan and from Ryder, Delaware, that have been hired by NFL
Yeah,
Films.
I actually it's like there's like job listings for that on Indeed, which is kind of funny to me because like
Indeed's like the offshoot of LinkedIn,
yeah,
right? I'm not on either, but
um, it's a little different.
it's a little
It's a
different.
little different. Yeah. So,
I've heard of them both as like job listing and resume building sites, but I just haven't heard anything. I've seen a lot of ads for Indeed,
yeah.
but I haven't really visited it to see what it
It was
is.
like for one of like my project for this class that we're doing this interview for, it was like go on different job sites and find jobs in your field. And I was like, okay. So I went on Indeed, I typed in sports broadcasting, and the first thing that came up was NFL Mount Laurel. I was like, that really? All right.
Like that's straight to the point.
Yeah.
But yeah, the end goal, Major League Baseball play by play, but there's only 35-ish jobs for that if you include national and
Yeah.
local. So And I'm talking about TV because I feel like I'm a better TV guy than a radio guy, but I also feel like I can be flexible and I can adapt to those situations. So, if you're the kind of person who wants to be ambitious with those goals, absolutely go for it. But people should be humble and should, consider all options, consider all avenues. And if you are going to be successful in the sports broadcasting world, you have to be flexible. You can't be a one-man band who just, only has one way of doing things. I operate the camera on pretty much every DWB live stream, except for a select few. And, people are like, "Oh wow, there was some really good camera work on that stream." I'm like, "Thank you." And they're like, "Who's your camera guy?" And that's like, "Me." Like, I have to be flexible in that matter just because of the hands that I'm given, the cards that I'm given, and the manpower that I have. So that would be my answer.
That's all I got. Unless you have a question for me.
No, that was really good. I think that you hit a lot of the nails on the head there. Um, and I definitely felt like I was in a hot seat there because I've interviewed a lot of people. And this is only the third or fourth time that I've been interviewed. And well, I think the first time I've been interviewed in person. So that's fun. And hopefully, Mr. Teacher, Mr. or Mrs. Teacher, whoever you're.
Both,
Oh,
actually.
you have multiple internship teachers.
Two. It's just two.
It's like a co-ed thing, or?
So the main guy, he's like the day-to-day teacher, and then the lady, shut up the next time. Um, she's like, she's the one who like gets everyone their internship, and she is so good at her job. She like finds people internships like that, like instantly.
Perfect. Yeah, so teachers, make sure you give this guy a grade. He does a great job, or a good grade. Make sure he gets a good grade because he does an excellent job. He's one of the best guys we have, and I am happy that not only can I do this interview, I can do it from the comfort of my own home in this brand new recliner couch. So, thank you everyone for listening. And again, Gateway teachers, make sure you give Ryan a good grade because he deserves it. That's going to be all for us here in the Dan Wilkins Show. Our next guest is Jeff Singer, former left-handed pitcher for the Philadelphia Phillies organization and Holy Cross prep grad. Next week, we had to push that interview back a few weeks because he welcomed his first daughter into the world a few weeks ago. So, somewhat important things in his world going on.
Just a little bit.
Just a tiny little bit. So that'll be all for us. Ryan Seber, I'm Dan Wilkins. We'll see you guys next week.